All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling a huge topic, corruption. But before you think this is going to be another political shouting match, I want you to know it's not. This is something much more personal. It's about our values, our trust, and really the future that we're all building together. We always see the big headlines, right? The scandals about billions of pesos gone missing. And it's so easy to point our fingers at the people in power. But what if that's not where corruption really gets its start? What if we've been looking in the wrong place this whole time? I mean, what if the real source of this massive problem is something smaller, something a lot closer to home, something that's happening in the tiny, seemingly harmless choices that we and the people around us make every single day? That's the idea we're going to unpack right now. So, how does a small choice turn into a massive problem? Well, think of corruption like a giant, unhealthy tree. The scandals we see in the news, that's the bitter fruit. But the seeds, those little seeds of dishonesty, are planted way earlier, often in the most ordinary places, and a lot of times we don't even notice. A lot of the time, the first lessons in corruption aren't learned in some shady boardroom. Nope, they're learned right here, in the classroom. When a student cheats on an exam, it's easy to just brush it off as a kid being a kid, but we might be missing something huge. We're not just seeing a broken rule, we're seeing the first lesson in a very dangerous curriculum. And this right here points to a really important idea, discarte. We often praise it as being clever or street smart, but when discarte is used to justify cheating, it becomes something else entirely. It's basically a training ground for future corruption. It teaches a really dangerous lesson. The goal isn't to be honest, it's just don't get caught. And you know what? That lesson, it doesn't stay in the classroom. That same mindset graduates and goes straight into the office. It starts showing up in little things, like padding expense reports, asking for under-the-table fees, or finding creative ways to handle taxes. And the justification for all of it? Oh, it's a classic. This one sentence, this right here, might be one of the most destructive phrases in our culture. It's like a permission slip people write for themselves to do the wrong thing. It makes dishonesty feel normal, and it creates this environment where having integrity can actually feel like you're at a disadvantage. But the most fertile ground for these seeds of dishonesty, it's not school, it's not the office, it's at home. Kids don't just listen to what we say about right and wrong. They are watching our every single move. They absorb our example, for better or for worse. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. Look at the two paths this can go down. On one side, you have a lesson in how to get away with things. On the other, a lesson in principle. Don't get caught teaches a kid that morality is flexible. It's only wrong if you're not smart enough to hide it. But don't cheat teaches that some lines should never, ever be crossed. The message they hear at home will literally shape who they become. Okay, so what happens when all these little seeds are watered and allowed to grow? When a culture of small lies turns into a system of massive corruption? Well, the consequences aren't just about money, they are devastatingly human. According to estimates, this is how much of the national budget is lost to corruption. Every single year, 20%. Just let that number sink in for a second. And let's be super clear, this isn't just some abstract number. It means that for every 5 pesos you pay in taxes, money that's supposed to build hospitals, buy textbooks, and fix roads, one of those pesos is just gone, siphoned away, vanished. And this is where it gets really serious. When the funds for a community health center get stolen, and a child dies because the medicine they needed is suddenly out of stock, that's the human cost. When a bridge collapses because it was built with cheap, substandard materials, that's the human cost. It's measured in lives that are lost and futures that are stolen. And maybe that's the biggest tragedy of all. It's not just that corruption happens, but that we can become so used to it, so numb to it, that we just accept it as normal. And when that happens, we lose a lot more than money. We lose our collective soul. Okay, so we've seen the symptoms, we've seen the terrible effects. But if you want to find a cure, you have to diagnose the disease, right? So, why does this culture of dishonesty seem to thrive? What are the roots that allow it to grow so deep into our society? Well, the analysis really points to 4 main factors. First up, you've got simple greed and a sense of entitlement. People who think their power gives them the right to take what isn't theirs. Then there's a culture that sometimes tolerates or even admires clever dishonesty. Add to that an education system that often focuses more on grades than on building character. And finally, a serious lack of accountability, which just sends the message that you can get away with it. All four of these together, it's the perfect storm. But here's the thing, and this is the most important part. If corruption is a learned behavior, then that means it can be unlearned. We can fight back. Not with more anger or politics, but by starting a quiet revolution of integrity. By choosing consciously to plant new, better seeds in our own lives and communities. So what's the game plan? How do we actually do this? Well, it boils down to these 5 steps. It starts at home by modeling honesty, especially when it's tough. It grows with transparency in everything we do and taking accountability when we mess up. It means shifting our focus in schools to celebrate good character just as much as good grades. And finally, it's about raising a generation that has the courage to stand up for what's right, not just what's easy. And this really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Real, lasting change isn't going to come from some sweeping government reform alone. It starts in the quiet moments. It begins in the conversations we have around the dinner table, in the examples we set for our kids, and in the small, honest choices we make every day at work. Let me share this with you. This is a real quote from a teacher who actually caught her own son cheating on a test. And instead of covering for him, she let him face the consequences. She chose to teach him a lesson in integrity that was worth so much more than any passing grade. That, right there, is what integrity in action looks like. So we're going to end with this question. Forget about all the laws and legislation for just a moment. The single most powerful tool for change is you. It's the example you set today and tomorrow and every day after that. Because in the end, corruption ends where our conscience begins, and the choice of what we teach the next generation, that's in our hands. So, what will you choose?